ever considered that we are living in a unique time, that something world-changing is about to happen, and that it might concern you? If so, you're in the right place. Keep listening, and you'll hear thought-provoking views behind the news that point to a new and better future for all. Many people now sense that humanity is not alone. So consider this. If the Christ or the Buddha walked among us today as modern men, would we recognize them? What would they be saying? And most importantly, would we listen? Every Sunday on this program, Share International Radio, we'll examine extraordinary events that are unfolding behind the headline news. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for. And now, welcome to this week's show.
And welcome to the show, Share on the Air Radio, North America. Appreciate you listening. My name is Cielito Pascual. I'm podcasting from Seattle, Washington. I helm this show with my colleague Diana Gold Holland and a wonderful team that brings this information to you, explaining that there are great world changes happening that concern you, that concern me, that concern all of humanity. And on this show, we talk about the ways in which we can play a part in bringing about the brilliant civilization that is available to all and is the eventuality of all, with the help of great elder brothers of humanity. Specifically, we are talking about the event that is the emergence of Maitreya, the world teacher, and the masters of wisdom. And welcome to all of you. Some of you may be listening for the very first time, and every week on this show, we present a perspective on this event, this emergence of Maitreya, the world teacher, and the masters of wisdom. We present ways to understand what's happening in the world in the context of this event, and we present ways in which you, the listener, can play a part in transforming the world. So many details. We're on our 70th show with this episode. We have introductory shows. There's so many resources online to learn more. So please stay listening, and I will give you links. We have a Facebook page if you want to follow this story and follow the latest episodes that can be found at Share on the Air Radio North America on Facebook. So I'm going to jump right in and introduce our guest today. I'm very excited to have my friend back. His name is David Minot, and often he writes it David Minot II. He is in Boston, Massachusetts. Glad to have you back, David. You are an artist, a very talented artist. You're so busy as an artist and an activist in Boston. You're either at public meetings or you're putting on art shows. And so really appreciate you taking the time to share ideas with me and with the audience. And you are also a longtime student of the Ageless Wisdom teachings, the source of our information for this show. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Cielito, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. That sums it up.
Yes, and the title of this episode is demonstrating our true divinity, Maitreya's teachings on the art of self-realization. And for those of us who have been listening to more than a few episodes of Share on the Air Radio, you know, as I stated earlier, that there's a great event unfolding, the emergence of Maitreya, the world teacher, and the masters of wisdom. And of course, you and I know, David, that when we share this information, we are not sharing this to convince people that we're right, that it's even true. We are presenting this in the spirit of inviting people to investigate for themselves. But on this show, we're going to explore an aspect of this event that really concerns what the individual can do to grow in awareness, and that is to put into place the principles of the art of self-realization. And this event of the emergence of Maitreya includes understanding the oneness of humanity. It includes the need for sharing the resources of the world. That is as much a critical part of this event, if not the most critical part. And it involves the growth of consciousness. So on this show, we're going to focus on the growth of consciousness. So let me ask you, David, just so the audience gets an idea of who you are and why the art of self-realization is of value to you to implement in your life. Tell us what exists in your life today that wasn't there before you came to understand Maitreya's teachings on the art of self-realization.
That's a great question, Cielito. I would say the difference has been a relief. To sum it up in one word, it was a relief to come across this information, and the effect it has had upon me has made me calmer, less emotional, a little more detached. We can discuss that more later, what that means. More altruistic, more aware, perhaps more willing and courageous to express my authentic self, less timid. Overall,
okay.
improvement.
And, you know, anyone who is listening to the show obviously takes in information that's on the internet, online. We get a lot of information. We see the news. And at this time, we're in the month of May in the year of 2017. We're seeing a lot of things happen in the world. In terms of the art of self-realization, how are you experiencing what's happening in the world? How did you receive all of that before your growing awareness of self-realization, and how do you perceive it now?
I'd say, Cielito, I had more of an emotional response before. I was more enamored of my own opinions. That would get a hard laugh from my friends. They say I still am. And I was probably more attentive and obsessed with, the needs of the body, every little ache and pain, and your desires and so on. And afterwards, I have experienced more of what Benjamin Creme had referred to, that process of decentralization. So less emotional, less tied to my own small opinions. The little wills of men, as we say in the Great Invocation, which I know you have talked about before on the show.
And we're making esoteric references here. We'll explain in a bit, decentralization, what that means. That might be new to our audience. Go ahead.
This is true. So less selfish, to sum it up, and more altruistic, more identifying with the world as a whole, and less with my own little separate self.
And tell us briefly how you came to know about the story of the emergence of Maitreya, the world teacher and the masters of wisdom.
Well, I hadn't yet discovered Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky, or Alice Bailey, or Benjamin Creme. I was actually reading a book of channeled material, New Age type material, and the author said, the Christ has left his ancient retreat in the Himalayas and now is living in London. I was thunderstruck.
What did that mean to you? That's a pretty enormous information to take in, and why did it strike you so much?
When I heard it, I was said, what? I had come from a Catholic background and had that mindset, though I had left the church behind in 1979, not out of anger or anything. I simply just walked away. It didn't seem to have anything more to offer me. So that was an experience of detachment. And I had been reading New Age material for years, and I hadn't come across this very much. I think I'd heard little inklings of it. So it meant to me that there was a new era, truly a new era dawning, not just the New Age, the phrase we'd all been using, but that something real was happening in the world, and it gave me a sense of hope for the future in a way that I hadn't experienced it before.
So let's go to the central topic of our show, and we're about a minute away or so from the break. So we can go into more detail in our next segment. But let's talk about the art of self-realization. Why, if we are divine beings, as is often said in many religious and spiritual traditions, what causes the problems of life?
Well, the answer we've gotten, Cielito, from Ben, which we'll have to go into more after the break. There's our music.
And we will continue.
Oh, yes, and I would just say quickly, identification with everything but the self, and we can talk about what that means after the break.
Yes, we will. We will be back after a moment. Please stay with us, and we're going to talk more on the art of self-realization.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatesPR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
Want to help build the coming golden age? Want to experience the Aquarian energies of love, light, and power? Transmission meditation is a simple way for you and 2 or more friends to do just that and accelerate your own spiritual growth at the same time. Check out Transmission Meditation at shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org.
Hey everybody, Rachel Ray here. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face than cooking up a big meal for the whole family and lots of friends. But there's not enough room at my table for the 17 million kids in our country who struggle with hunger. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks collects surplus food to give hope to hungry kids. But they can't do it without your help. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
And we're back on Share on the Air Radio. I'm with my guest, David Minot. My name is Cielito Pascual. During the break, we heard an ad for transmission meditation. And later in the show, we are going to talk about the power of transmission meditation as a way for a growth of consciousness, which is critical in this time and critical for our own development, especially if we are interested in moving towards our divinity. We'll talk about transmission meditation in our later segments. So, David, I was asking you why, if we are fundamentally divine beings, what causes problems in life?
Well, we have planted a seed before the break, Cielito, when you asked that question by saying, well, it starts with identification with anything and everything but the self, meaning we're over-identified with the mind, the emotion, the physical body. And that brings to mind a quote that I had found from Maitreya, which I'd like to read if you don't mind.
Yeah,
and
please.
It goes thusly. Maitreya says, "The self alone matters. You are that self, an immortal being. Suffering is caused by identification with everything and everything which is not the self. Ask yourself, who am I? You will see that you are identified either with matter, the body, or with thought, the mind, or with power, spirit. But you are none of these. Mind, spirit, and body are the temples of the Lord. The self experiences in these the supreme being and becoming of the Lord. Being is eternal, becoming is unfolding in time and space, and the self experiences both." There, I think Maitreya summed it up better than I could, Cielito.
And we'd love to have you explain that a little further for our audience.
Yes, my
had talked
take
about.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. You had talked about the over-identification with the self.
Yes.
Not self. I mean to say the over-identification with the mind, the emotions, and the body.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what does it mean to be over-identified with the mind?
Well, that's to put too much stock in your own thoughts and to think you are the mind. A lot of us think we are the mind, and we let it rule us with its endless chatter and rationalization of everything, as Jiddu Krishnamurti, who some of our readers may have heard of, once said, "We rationalize everything, and at the end of it, we found nothing." And the mind goes on endlessly like that with a lot of dead ends. And that can cause us to become neurotic and other issues as well, even more serious. And I could probably go on to mention, if it's not too much, the emotions. We over-identify with our feelings. We think we are our feelings. Our depression, our anger, our excitement, all of these things, when they're really just something, like the mind, that we're experiencing, like a roller coaster. The roller coaster isn't you, it's a ride that you got on. And then finally, Cielito, the physical body. We over-identify with the body. We think we are the body with its various needs and desires and inclinations and aches and pains and so on.
And we believe, it's interesting because our world is created, our society is created in order to enforce these identifications, which you're saying are complete illusions. So
Yes.
How do we separate ourselves from this identification or reorient ourselves away from this wrong identification?
Well, first we must realize that they are vehicles of the self, the mind, the emotions, the body, the energies. These are the vehicles, like a car. And as I'm fond of telling people when I explain this, we don't let the car drive itself. Self-driving cars that are coming up notwithstanding, because ordinary cars will crash if you allow them to drive themselves. So why do we allow the mind and the emotions and the physical body to drive us? We're supposed to be in the driver's seat. We're supposed to direct them. And that's where the self comes in. And I think you were asking too, how do we become more aware of it? Was that it? Go ahead.
Well, what I'm realizing as you're speaking, when people describe a certain emptiness, even after achieving a lot of success, they're wealthy, they're able to buy whatever their heart's desire is, and then they come away with a sense of, I still feel empty. Is this the outcome of identifying with everything that is not the self?
Yes, indeed it is, because the self isn't about physical objects. It's not about money. It's not about our feelings. It's not about our thoughts. It's about the real you that stands behind that, which I know we had talked about before, that sense when you're still of something being above you, below you, beside you, behind you. And once again, it's when you're still in mind and body and emotion, not practiced stillness, not something pretentious, but when you're at peace. And when you experience that quiet, one way to do that would be through meditation, which we'll talk more about later, then I think everybody at one time or another, Cielito, has felt that presence. And that presence is the real you, the self.
It's interesting, too, when I'm out in the world, I see how people constantly have the radio on or constantly have the TV on. Like, we need noise because we don't want to perhaps be with the self, be in silence.
Yes.
Talk more about how does the self manifest at different levels? I think most of us would think, oh, the self is the soul, and the body has a soul. But there is a nuance here that we've learned from the author Benjamin Creme, which he describes in a video. I'll tell our audience how to find that video online a little later. But there's a nuance in how the self manifests, how it reflects itself down to the physical plane. Can you talk about that relationship?
Yes, and Alice Bailey had mentioned that too, but we don't have any videos of her, so I'm glad you mentioned the Benjamin Creme videos so the audience can look into that for themselves. Yes, we think of, or we've been presented by the Ageless Wisdom teaching and by Benjamin Creme most recently, as the self being the spirit, the part of you that is God, and it in turn reflects its intention onto the soul, which is sort of the go-between, between the self and us. In other words, the threefold man and woman on the dense physical plane. Threefold, meaning what we mentioned earlier, Cielito, the mind, the body, the emotions. So there's the self, then the soul, and then our personality. And it's reflected down through those levels to us, and our job is to reflect the nature of the soul, which I think we might want to talk about it trying to manifest the plan for creation as it understands it through the personality on the dense physical plane. In other words, here in the world. So we're trying to bring the self to this world. And since the self is God, in a sense, we're trying to bring God, we're trying to bring heaven, if you will, to earth. We're trying to make of earth a heaven. If we could get the mind and the body and the emotions to be still and quiet enough, then we could accurately reflect that. Because otherwise it's like a pond or any body of water with a wind rushing across it, or if it's choppy, that doesn't work as a mirror. But once the water's still, you can see your reflection in it. And you are the self. You can see your reflection of the real you in the personality you, the level we're talking on, Cielito, right now with the audience. Does that answer the question?
Let's talk more. Let's
Yes.
unpack this more. How does one work towards self-realization? What are the steps?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I forgot that part. There's always something I leave out. One of the things Maitreya and Benjamin Creme have mentioned many times is that we need to practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. So what does that mean? Honesty of mind, well, we say one thing, we do another, or I should say, we say one thing, we think another, and we do yet a third. We need to get more congruent. All those things need to be on the same page. Sincerity of spirit, many of people aren't themselves. They don't know who they are. We kowtow, we mimic, and we wander around in life and don't find our true purpose, partly as a result of that. Why we're here, our soul's purpose, which is usually a couple of things, and it will take a while to get into, so we needn't be bothered with that right now. And then detachment.
We can get into that, yeah, definitely.
Yes. And then detachment, where you don't get too excited when things go well, and you don't get too depressed and despondent when things go poorly, or we're in crisis or not the way we planned. That middle path that the Buddhists talk about, even though we're not Buddhists and the masters in Maitreya are non-denominational, you strive for that middle road where you're, because you're calm and you're reflecting the self, you're not thrown off kilter by the stresses and strains of life.
Because one recognizes the impermanence of what's happening in the world.
Indeed. Yes.
And so one is able to move down that middle path. So
Yes.
We're at a break. In the next segment, we are going to explore why self-realization is different from self-expression. So stay with us. Share on the Air Radio North America is on Facebook.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millisers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
Want to help humanity and the planet? Transmission meditation is a simple but powerful way for you and 2 or more friends to do just that and dramatically accelerate your own spiritual growth. You can read the book on transmission meditation, free online. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
My name is Dale Pazinski, and this is how I live United. I volunteer with United Way, helping the homeless in my community by teaching computer skills and helping them build a basic resume to save on their very own USB drive. It's huge when somebody says, "Hey man, that job that you helped me apply for, I got it." My name is Dale Pazinski. I help people achieve financial independence. So I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
We're on episode 70 of Share on the Air Radio, demonstrating our true divinity, Maitreya's teachings on the art of self-realization. And I'm with David Minot. We are talking about the process of the art of self-realization. And David, I have a question for you. We often hear the phrase, follow your bliss. And there's plenty of personal development workshops and things online where we can work on our lives and improve ourselves. What's the distinction between that and the art of self-realization?
Well, with the art of self-realization, Cielito, we're concerning ourselves with the growth of consciousness and a couple things we touched upon before, the oneness
What
of
does that
humanity.
mean, growth of consciousness, and why is it necessary?
Well, in this way, we are performing here on the dense physical plane the intention of the self and the soul's purpose. And would you like me to describe a little bit more about that, go a little more in depth?
Yes, please.
As we said before, the self is reflecting God and the plan for creation as it understands it, down to the soul, who acts as the go-between, between the spirit, the self, and the person on the dense physical plane. Because there's such a wide gulf between the self and the threefold man on the dense physical plane, us, the personality, at least at this point in our development. So the soul is trying its best to get that intention, to get that view, to get that divinity infused into the personality, the level you and I are talking now. And it's trying to move through those vehicles, the mind, the body, and the emotion, without any kind of impedance, is that a word? Without being slowed down or blocked by anything. But we do throw up roadblocks to the soul so that it has difficulty expressing itself through our souls, through me right now as I'm speaking, through you, through the audience, on the dense physical level. We're having difficulty because the way our minds, our bodies, and our emotions operate in expressing the self. And some of these blocks could be what we've called glamours, the sort of fog that each of us has, whether those fogs are caused by ignorance or blindness or anger or depression or low self-esteem or fear.
Or fear.
Yes, fear. That's really key. And this is what the fear, I'm glad you stopped on that word, Cielito, because I was going to go right past it. The fear is often the strongest power, which is really, it's an illusion, it's not really real.
Or
in blocking.
Inhibitor.
Inhibitor, yes, that's a great word. Inhibits the soul's expression through us, through our personality, through the mind, the body, and the emotions. And so we need to unblock it. And we can talk more about how we unblock that, how we get it to flow through the vehicles we mentioned earlier, the mind, the body, and the emotions, or the temples, as they've often been referred to. It's supposed to move freely through those.
Let's talk about the purpose of the soul. You are explaining that the self, and again, our information is based on the Ageless Wisdom teachings as presented by Benjamin Creme. And the whole body of this information can be found online at share-international.org. The self reflects through the soul, and then the soul reflects down to the physical plane, manifesting, expressing through the person on the physical plane. Let's talk about the purpose of the soul, which is distinct from the self.
Yes, the soul is trying to interpret the self's intention and reflect it, as you pointed out, reflect it down into the man and woman, humanity, on the dense physical plane, and to reflect and demonstrate that plan for creation, to act out that and serve that plan of creation. So it's a sense of service. The soul serves. And that's all the soul knows is service. That's what the universe runs on. So it's trying to get us to do that. And as it grips its vehicles, the mind, the body, and the emotion, the person on the dense physical plane, whether it be you, Cielito or myself or anyone in our audience, everyone on the planet, we gradually become more altruistic, more interested in politics, in the environment, in healthcare, housing, education, justice and equality. All of these things are indications that the soul has begun to successfully grip its vehicles, as Benjamin Creme has put it, its vehicles being the mind, the body, and the soul. You have no choice. Once that process begins, you begin to act that way. You begin to care more about your fellow man because you see yourself as your fellow man. You see the world in you. You see your brethren in you.
And so this is a response to the downflow of energy from the soul.
Exactly.
This outward expression of concern for humanity, marching in the streets for the environment. What would you say about the fact that we're seeing such a expression around the world of people wanting to march and to make statements and to protest? How does that correlate with the emergence of Maitreya and what you're talking about, the soul gripping the individual and prompting them to have concern for the world?
Well, I know that Benjamin Creme has said that there's millions of people in the world who are on the cusp of or have crossed over into this kind of awareness. And this energy is flooding the planet. The masters of wisdom are sort of, I guess we could say, the custodians of these great energies that stream into the planet from extraplanetary and cosmic sources and are inspiring humanity. And everybody is responding to these. Everybody is responding to the plan with a capital P. Though most people, Cielito, are not even aware that there is a plan for the planet, but there certainly is. Everybody from the most debased of individuals to the most exalted are all responding to the plan. Some in a sort of twisted fashion, as certain political figures, I won't mention any names, maybe, or people who we also admire, some political figures and those in recent history, are also doing it, but more clearly, like, say, perhaps a Gandhi or a Martin Luther King, or even, say, something like a Jimmy Carter or a Nelson Mandela, Mikhail Gorbachev. They are, to the best of their ability, reflecting in their actions the plan. And now people by the millions are doing it around the world when they protest for civil rights, justice and equality, whether it's Black Lives Matter, or it's the women's movement, or it's Occupy Wall Street, or it's for LGBT rights, or if it's for political freedom, for the fair distribution of water and food, if it's for quality education, for the environment, which I think I might have already mentioned, and for health care. These are all the priorities of the masters, and these are all indications that people throughout the world, by the millions, if not the billions, are responding to the call of the soul. For this is the soul's purpose.
Also, another thing to point out about our current time is that we're coming to the end of a particular cycle and moving into a new cycle. Can you talk about that?
Yes, we're coming out of the age of Pisces, which is, we're not slamming sun sign Pisces. This has to do with astronomy and not so much with mundane astrology. Any astronomer could tell you that the planet was oriented towards the constellation of Pisces for the last 2,000 years and is now becoming oriented towards the constellation of Aquarius. And the Piscean
not just
age,
the planet, but our solar system, yes?
Thank you. Yes. See, talk about not being able to clearly express the soul's purpose. I've studied astrology all these years, and I forgot that very important detail. So there you go, right there.
There's many moving parts to this story, David. So
yes, indeed.
No problem.
So in the Aquarian age, it's more an age of synthesis, bringing together disparate movements. Like, for instance, now instead of socialism or capitalism, we now have social democracy, we now have democratic socialism. And under the Piscean age, what was perfected was the individual and the idea of idealism. And because before, 2,000 years ago, people had more of a herd mentality for the age of Jesus of Nazareth, who inaugurated the age of Pisces. And now we perfected that. We perfected the individual, we perfected the idealism, and now we've gone too far. We got people doing their own thing. We got religious and political fanaticism. Now we need to temper that. And we are with the energies of Aquarius, where we're thinking in groups. Group activity is where it's at, not the individual. People power. People power is the new world superpower. This synthesis of energies, this reconciling of opposites, the opposites that became so obvious during the age of Pisces. And this is the part of the plan of creation, the plan of God. And this is an example of everyone responding to their own souls, to their own self. Does am I getting it, or is there something else I left out, Cielito?
Well, David, we're exploring this and unpacking our understanding here, and it's an exploration. I don't think we're trying to get a perfect A on a quiz here. So I appreciate our audience being a part of this. So we're at a break, and we will go into our final segment, which is always about what our audience can do to play a part in this great transformation of the planet. Stay with us. Share on the Air Radio.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance. Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Share International Magazine is unique in the world today. It draws connections that make sense between headline news and spiritual changes unfolding now on a global scale, and explains the forces driving those changes. It may be the message of hope you have been waiting for. Investigate for yourself at shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org. Shareontheairradio.org.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to, are you? Kids, work, listening to the radio. You're busy, which is great because busy people can't get prediabetes. Oh my, I read that wrong. They can. Should have worn my glasses. So visit doihaveprediabetes.org and take a short test, because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
And we're in our final segment of our show, demonstrating our true divinity, Maitreya's teachings on the art of self-realization. And I promised to share some links for our audience that will provide more information on the story of Maitreya's emergence with the Masters of Wisdom. So I will direct our audience to visit share-international.org. That's share-international.org. That's S-H-A-R-E. And I love this resource. This is on YouTube. So simply do an online search for Share International YouTube, and your top result will be the link you want to go to. There are just dozens of videos of excerpts from Benjamin Creme's lectures in New York and around the world. Benjamin Creme, again, he is the author of 12.5 books on the emergence of Maitreya, the world teacher, a lot of detail, including information on the art of self-realization. So many books on that. You'll see that at the website share-international.org. And I will also, since people may be jotting this down, visit transmissionmeditation.org. This is a critical tool, so to speak, for growth in consciousness. Transmissionmeditation.org. And we're going to talk about that right now. Anything else I want to cover? I think that's it for now. The way that people can play a part, David. Talk about your experience with transmission meditation and what that is.
Well, transmission meditation, Cielito, is a form of world service par excellence, as Benjamin Creme referred to it once. It's not like transcendental meditation, which is more personal, but it's a universal act. It's a world service in keeping with the theme of the Age of Aquarius, and it's done in group formation. Now, when I first found out about the emergence after I read that line in that book, it was later that year that I picked up a Hand of Maitreya placard at a New Age conference on Shasta, California, but it was 5 years before I actually went to a proper lecture back in Boston where I paid attention about Maitreya and the Masters, and I picked up the book on transmission meditation and Ben's first book, and I went home and I read it, and then I asked my mentor, what should I do? And he said, start a group. So he started a group, and I started doing it. And I found transmission meditation, first off, appeal to people that I hadn't even met before, all the people that I thought would be into it, who I had made my New Age journey with for the last 10 or 12 years, seemed to fall away. Most of them weren't interested in it, but a couple were. And transmission meditation, as I said, is a world service where these great energies that the Masters of Wisdom and Maitreya are custodians of are brought into the world, and they go through our chakras, our upper chakras, those energy centers in the body, the Ajna center between the eyebrows, sometimes the crown chakra, sometimes the throat or the heart chakra, and out into the world. We don't direct them, but they pass through us. And this group meditation develops a group consciousness eventually. And people have even been known to get healings during transmission meditation sessions. Not that that's the primary purpose, but it's a nice side effect. And it speeds up your own personal evolution. Benjamin Creme has said that 1 year of transmission meditation is equivalent to 10 years of ordinary meditation, done properly, in terms of your own personal evolution. So you're sort of adding to the great spiritual energies that the whole world drinks from, to put it poetically, which again I think is a quote I stole from Benjamin Creme, Cielito, because these energies are used by all the kingdoms, mineral, plant, animal, human, and of course the kingdom of souls from which they come, knowingly or not. And because the masters themselves are overshadowed by even greater beings, like one we've heard of is the avatar of peace and equilibrium. I don't know if we have much time to get into the particulars, Cielito. But those energies can even help countries negotiate that are at each other's throats. Once again, I think I'm stealing a quote from Benjamin Creme. And so there's many ways in which this helps not only you as you do it, not only the group that you're involved in, and it should be in a group of 3 or more to be most effective, but the entire planet. But as you know, not everybody is keen on meditation or that particular type of meditation. So there's also the reappearance work. Did you want to talk more about meditation before I go leaping off into another subject?
Well, I wanted to ask you, what makes transmission meditation so potent?
Ah, yes. What makes it so potent is that these energies are coming directly from the masters and going through you out into the world. And so it's the fact that it's a form of world service, and that's what the soul's purpose is, to serve. So you're performing the soul's purpose. That's coming very close to reflecting the self that we began by talking about. Your service in doing transmission meditation is performing a soul purpose that otherwise might be overlooked. Is that helpful?
Service is an expression of divinity.
Yes, that's all the soul knows.
When we help another person, we are expressing our divinity. What other reasons make transmission meditation so powerful?
Well, it's transmission meditation is, as I said, done in a group formation, which is part of the nature of the Aquarian age, and in that way it reflects the energies that are flooding the planet right now, and you're sharing them with the world. Sharing being divine and part of the theme of Maitreya's emergence and Share International. And those energies are being used by all the kingdoms in nature, on the planet, and it's accelerating your own spiritual evolution and putting you more in touch with the soul. Meditation's primary purpose is to put the soul in touch with the personality, and to, as we said earlier, grip that personality, the mind, the body, and the emotions, and put them more in the service of the plan of creation, of the self, of God itself. So you're bringing that divinity, you're bringing God more into the world, into your life, and the lives of everyone by doing meditation, transmission meditation.
And if the idea of transmission meditation is very appealing to our listeners, again, visit transmissionmeditation.org, and there will be a page where you can locate a group that's near you. You can just submit your information, your location, zip code, and you will receive information on a group that's practicing near you. It's very casual, typically in someone's home. And if there's not a group nearby, one, as you said, David, can create their own group. Just invite 2 friends, and you meet for a regular time and day. You have consistency in that meeting, and the practice of transmission meditation can be very powerful for everyone involved. In our last
Cielito,
3 minutes. Yes, David.
If I could just mention one other thing that I forgot, that once again you reminded me, with the take you gave on transmission meditation. It's a stepping down of those great spiritual energies. That's what I forgot to mention, making them more accessible and useful to the world and everybody in it, because otherwise those energies are at such a high vibration, they bounce off of us, myself included.
Very good point. I'm glad you brought that up again. More details and a video explanation of transmission meditation at transmissionmeditation.org. So in our last 2 minutes, David, can you just briefly speak about the aspect of this event of the emergence of Maitreya, the world teacher, and the masters of wisdom, the aspect of service that is about sharing this story? We've talked about the growth of consciousness. We've briefly talked about the event itself. Our listeners can listen to other episodes that go into more detail about the event of the emergence. But talk about the act of sharing this story. Why is that important?
It's important, and it's something that you and I and many others have done, because it gives people hope. Looks like we're running out of time, and hope is very important to sustaining people's energy and vision for the future.
David, thank you so much. There's so much more we could talk about. I invite our audience to follow us on Facebook, Share on the Air Radio North America, and you will know about all of 70 episodes of the show, plus more. We continue to do a show every week on the emergence of Maitreya, the world teacher, and the masters of wisdom. There is hope for the future. We have a brilliant civilization awaiting us if we choose the principle of sharing in all our endeavors.